So today we're talking about the data connector service. So the data connector service is configured from the model designer, and we do that by adding in the address of where the data connector service is located. The data connector service is a Windows service, and we can click connect, and then we can create a new configuration and select the type of live data we want to bring into the system. And the data connector service will work to move the data from your live device into your model. Now, if you're running Status Device Cloud, you have a data connector service that's already running in the cloud, and the address for it you can get just by logging into your account. So this is the address here that you would paste into this location. So the data connector service in the cloud, in Status Device Cloud, is good when the type of live data can live out of the internet. So in this case, things like the data simulator will work from the data connector service that's hosted in Status Device Cloud. Other types like MQTT, OPCUA, things that are web friendly like REST, web services, all of those types of data connectors will work with the data connector service that's hosted with Status Device Cloud. Now, if you are running Status Enterprise or you are running Status Device Cloud and you want to use Status Device Cloud with a type of data that isn't internet friendly, then you need to change the architecture a little bit. So even though you have a status data connector service running in Status Device Cloud, for Status Enterprise, and if you're trying to get OPCDA data off of your device and up into Status Device Cloud, you're going to need to install a data connector service behind your firewall. And the reason for this is things like OPCDA, things like your Siemens PLC driver, your Allen Bradley drivers, those things that need to run behind the firewall, they're not going to run up in the cloud and work. OPCDA, for example, is not an internet-friendly protocol. It relies on Microsoft's operating systems in order to function. It's not going to work for you using a data connector service in Status Device Cloud with OPCDA. So in order to get around that, we install a data connector service local. And we configure that data connector service to pull in data from the PLC or from the device through whatever the proprietary drivers are. And the data connector service will then send that data up to your model in Status Device Cloud. So looking at the installed programs, if you're running Status Enterprise, you can install the data connector service separately. So you can install it on the same server or the same machine as your Status server with Status Enterprise. And that's perfectly fine. In fact, that's the way it's done most of the time. But you can also put that data connector out on other machines if you want. Pull the data from your devices and then configure the data connector service to send it to wherever your Status Enterprise server is. If you are running Status Device Cloud, this is your data connector service here that you can install locally. So yes, you have one in the cloud, and it is useful for a number of different kinds of live data. But if you're working with some live data that is not internet friendly, you need to install that data connector service local and configure it in order to send data to your system. So now we're going to pretend that we are trying to set up some OPCDA data to go up into Status Device Cloud. So the first thing that we do is we want to connect to our data connector service. So we're going to make the assumption that I ran the Status Device Cloud installer and I've installed a data connector service locally. And this is the address for the data connector service that is local on the system on your local computer by default. We don't want to use this data connector service that's inside Status Device Cloud. We want to use the one that's local. And we're going to connect to that data connector service. And we're going to create a new configuration called OPC-DA, and we're going to select our OPC-DA client, and we are going to select a local OPC-DA server. So the next thing we need to do, so this is where the live data is going to come from. The next thing we need to do is specify where it's going to go. So we want that live data to come into the data connector service from OPC-DA, and then we're going to be sending it out to Status Enterprise that's out in Status Device Cloud. So we're going to use that address that we were given of our Status Device Cloud server to configure this second tab here. And then we can click Connect. And now we can configure mappings. So now I can start configuring my mappings. I have my OPC-DA tags here on my right, and on my left I've got a collection of freezers, and I can map now the temperature of this freezer to this property in my OPC UA server. Click Add Mapping. So now as these values update in OPC-DA, they're going to be moved out to the cloud and populate these positions in the data model that I have in my Status Device Cloud deployment. So again, the configuration we just set up is bringing data from an OPC-DA server into a data connector service that's installed locally and then moving it out to the cloud. This is for Status Device Cloud. For Status Enterprise, it's the same setup. The only difference is instead of status being out in the cloud, Status Server and Status Enterprise Server is installed locally. But it's still the same situation. You still want to install your data connector service and configure it to pull your OPC-DA data and update the data model with your version of Status, whether it's Status Device Cloud or Status Enterprise.